We are here today in solidarity, in community, to affirm our commitment to this time, to this place, to this space that we share, to oppose threats of violence and hate speech, to support our LGBTQ community and all those who are threats of violence and oppression, and to resist together and individually any manifestation of oppression and violence. We are here to unite in safety and justice, and I thank each of you and all of you for coming this afternoon. As you know, last week a chalking was found that surpassed the boundaries of hate speech to threaten violence. It was not, I'm sorry to say, the first incident of threat or of violence or of injustice toward the LGBTQ community on this campus. And so this Parrish Lawn event this afternoon acknowledges the repeated offenses in this community against our LGBTQ members. There is no single incident which is ever acceptable of such activity, and it is horrible that this community and our entire community has endured these expressions. But the event last week, while one of many repeated offenses, is also different than those that went on before, and it's important to understand the difference of this chalking. These words threaten death. They're words of violence. They're words beyond the horror of just hatred. They're words that perform. A small piece of chalk, some paint, magic marker. These are the recent weapons of hate and violence on our campus. The chalking, though small, was enormous in its impact. The words, queer dorms, tits, kill them all, powerful words, written in chalk, washed quickly away, but seared upon our souls. The words have made some of us, many of us, scared in our own home, a home that ironically as a college community is ideally a place of enlightenment and hope. These words, now erased from our sight, but not from our hearts, have many, all perhaps, of us deeply upset. These words, now gone from visibility, are forever part of our experience at Swarthmore, and we must do all that we can to make sure that not only the chalk, but the legacy of hate itself is erased and prevented from being written, spoken, or performed again on this campus. We live in a world where oppression and hate and violence and injustice are all too frequent. If I or we could prevent it from happening in this garden haven and these halls of inquiry and the quest from truth, of course we would do so. But chaos and evil invade, they seep in, they breach our boundaries, our open boundaries of the campus, they sneak into our lives. They erupt in small and big ways. We are hurt and disgusted. We are horrified by it. I don't grow accustomed to such language. I've seen that some of you say you do. I find it hard not to always be appalled. I refuse to treat it as ordinary. I refuse to let it grow banal in my experience. Though such violence and hatred and oppression is woven into our culture and structural systems, the response must not be ever, that's just normal, that's the way it is. Our task as Swarthmorians, and more than that, just as humans, is always to unveil it, expose it, resist it. So our response begins in solidarity with those victimized. It must begin by understanding that when any one of us is oppressed or threatened, belittled or objectified, we all are. I appreciate those of you who attended the collection. On Friday, it was one time of coming together, of expressing what was in our hearts, of trying to hear each other. I thank each of you who have listened to each other. I thank you for walking side by side, for hearing the angst, the pain, the fear. I thank you for engaging in difficult conversations, for writing in the Daily Gazette, and as Zach James recently suggested, chalking 3 to 1 about love. Our response must be to support one another and to identify with each other, no matter what our differences, and no matter what our commonalities. We all strive to create a better world, a better place for this and future generations. We must feel in our gut and know in our heads that when one is threatened, we really all are threatened. When one sub-community is objectified, we are all objectified. We have a liberal, highly individualistic, deeply passionate activist community. But sometimes I fear when we come to address our human hearts and our human hurts, we only look at our particular passion or our particular sub-community. So a collection after an incident of threat and violence against the LGBTQ community means usually that the LGBTQ members and supporters show up. But where's the rest of us? Can we not take time to stand with those who represent another sub-community or another concern? Let us embrace each other's passions and dreams and hurts. Let us become a community drawn together by our diversity, an inclusive community, not just an association of sub-communities. You may never be able to fully experience my hurts, nor I yours, but we can live with empathy. We can support each other, and we can refuse to objectify or dismiss or belittle each other's hurts. We need to listen. We need to listen deeply to those in the LGBTQ community and any who feel threatened in this community. It's terrible to worry about walking out in the night or in the day wondering, is this the day or night I'm going to be hurt? I imagine many of us have had that fear. But we also need to attend to the psychological pressure, the emotional anxiety, the sheer grief of knowing your home has been invaded, that you have become the one targeted, that you are the other. Empathy, the scholar Diane Teachin-Myers once said, is not about what you would feel in that person's place. It's about understanding what that person feels in that person's place. Imagine, identify, support. We need to learn to respond. If every one of us would resist when we hear each and every slur of homophobia, the ugliness of misogyny, the danger of racist stereotypes, our community would indeed be stronger, safer, more secure. Our daily response to each little comment is utterly in our power. I pledge to you that I and my colleagues and the faculty and the staff, the alumni, the neighbors, the students, I think we all want the same thing, a safe, hospitable, open community that is truly open to inquiry and difference and inclusivity. The insidious nature of evil means that we must resist and overcome it bit by bit, day by day, person by person. Students, faculty, staff, administrators. We have to disarm the proponents of hatred with the gospel of love, fighting with our hearts, not only our tongues. We have to be fierce and resolute to combat bigotry, but we must not resort to the childish tactics we deplore. We must not resort to the same low standards that lead to ignorance and hatred towards our fellow men and women. So some have mentioned to me on these very grounds that they are tired of hearing about civility because they are angry. I don't think that civility means you can't be angry. Be angry, as Martin Luther King was angry. Be angry as Lucretia Mott was angry. But recall that revolutions may be fueled by anger, but when successful in leading to transformation, they're also directed by peace and justice. Civility is not the etiquette of passivity. It is the speech and practice of truth, justice, and power. Feel anger, but don't justify just any old action because you're angry. Let us plan our actions with convictions and respect for ourselves and for everyone in this community. Let our anger, as the social ethicist Bev Harrison has said, work in the power of love. So some have also suggested that they're tired of hearing that Swarthmore is exceptional. I think we need to be very careful about such claims. And if we have claimed that this space is a haven or a heaven on earth, we have claimed too much. But that's not to say we don't have good principles. And I do think the principles that founded us, the principles that ground us, the principles we use to critique ourselves, the principles we live up to, are just, important, and true. Our Hicksite Quaker founders stood for justice, resisting oppression, addressing violence with peace, and letting their lives speak. These are the principles that have guided us throughout our history. We have never been perfect. We are not now. But these are principles that are sacred, that should guide us, that we should use to critique ourselves, that we should aspire into living together. So I want us to work together. I want us not to climb over each other to cite who gets the credit for this or that, or who is in this or that position. I want us to stop wasting our energy fighting among ourselves, because that's a victory for whoever chalked that night. We all want injustice to turn to justice. We all unite for safety. Let us work together. Let us work for a campus where everyone walks safely, where everyone goes to a party and dances with whomever one wants, where everyone is affirmed in their sexual identity, in their racial identity, in their gender identity. Let us be a campus that embraces a range of religions and skepticism, of cultures and questions, of interest and perspectives. We are not exceptional, but we are on a journey to build community in which each one of us can flourish. We can embrace moral vision, ethical principles. We can live each moment for our own just community. This is our challenge. This is our imperative. Thank you.
So I just want to take a moment and sort of go off script here for a minute. And I hope that you guys can all take a look around. You know, we all came here as individuals. But seriously, look behind you. Look to your left and right. Look at who's standing. This is incredible. This is a wonderful, wonderful group of people that's come together. So thank you, first of all, for coming. I think it's a little bit more than I expected, but I hope that we can see this many people out here every time we need to come together. So let's not make this a one-time event, please. Also, good afternoon. As a fellow student, my thoughts and prayers are with Ravi and his family, and I hope to see you all tonight at the vigil in his memory. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out here this afternoon. I believe that this is a very important gathering at a very critical time in our community's development. I personally appreciate your support and dedication to the Swarthmore community and also to the queer community. Now, we've come together today in light of recent chalkings outside of the Worth dorms. Last Friday, a group of students, faculty, staff, and administrators gathered for an immediate collection in response to these events. And as a member of the queer community, I was thankful for this opportunity to come together and voice our opinions, share our thoughts, and put forth what we believe should be the next steps to fix this problem. This is a problem that has occurred not once, not twice, but now 3 times on our campus this year alone. One of the suggestions and hopes of members of the queer community following that meeting was that we would have an event that was more visible and accessible to the student body. So I'd like to thank the administration, student council members, members of the queer community, and everybody else who listened to what we had to say and made this gathering here today a reality. With that said, I'd also like to thank Dean Braun for the immediacy of her email in response to last week's events. There was like less than a 2-hour turnaround from the time that it was reported to public safety to when we got the email, which is much improved on past events. So thank you for that. Now, I'd like to back up for just a moment and let you inside a bit of my own life. As many of you know, and many of you probably don't know, I came to Swarthmore as a member of the current junior class. But in my first semester here, I decided to take a leave of absence, and I had no intention of coming back. But it was during my time away that I realized how special this school really is. It was in my time away that I learned how much I really valued having a space where I felt so safe and so welcomed, where people looked to help me rather than to hurt me. And in my 2 years here, for the most part, I've always felt incredibly safe and free to express myself in any way that I wish. I've been accepted into a lot of communities, including the queer and the athletic communities. And while the graffiti earlier in the year, along with the comment made at the queer party saddened me, I still felt safe here. But for the first time at Swarthmore, and possibly for the first time in my life, the events of last week scared me. And I'm still scared. And I don't think I'm alone in my feeling. I'm scared to present myself as an openly queer person. I'm scared to walk alone on campus at night. I'm afraid to cross the wrong line with the wrong person. This is just as much my home as it is anyone else's. And I don't want to be scared in my own home. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and throw my identity at you, and I'm not even asking you to accept the life that I live, but rather I'm asking that you be respectful of it. But not only be respectful of the way that my life differs from yours, but also be respectful of the way that your neighbors, classmates, and professors' lives differ from your own. We all know that Swarthmore College is an institution that prides itself on bringing in students who value social change and community in ways that many others do not. We are all given the resources, every resource we could possibly need to start and bring about these social changes. And I won't stand up here and tell you that social change begins within ourselves, because we know this. Before we can change the world around us, we must want and believe that we ourselves can change. As members of the Swarthmore community, it is my hope that each and every single one of you believes that the events that happened last week were completely unacceptable. That by hurting members of the queer community, we are in turn hurting the Swarthmore community as a whole. Each group on campus serves its own function within the walls of the school that make it our home. And by hurting one group, we've hurt that foundation and we've hurt our school. To those of you whose lives were not specifically threatened last week by the chalking "kill them all," or who may not understand why this feels so personal to us, I hope that you will take some time to reflect on the effect that something as serious as these words may have. Understand that these words hurt us, but also understand that these words really scare us. We as Swaties know that the forces of hatred, racism, homophobia, and misogyny that exist in this so-called real world, which we all come from, we all return home to, and we will all move on to, so we cannot possibly think that these do not exist here at Swarthmore. Queer and other marginalized community members bring with them that context and their own experiences. So when we hear a threat to our safety, we are reminded of the many acts of violence and intimidation that are so very real to us. We react to these threats as serious and real, no matter the forum or the method, because they are. And we all look to the greater community to stand up for us and our safety, to support us unconditionally and forcefully. What we all must understand and push through is the fact that while this event draws everyone's attention to a few chalked words that were easily removed, it is the underlying sentiments that we cannot trivialize or pretend no one at Swarthmore or the real world subscribes to. In a community, we have the unique opportunity to build our strength and our practice at protecting our most vulnerable, calling out oppression and hate speech when we hear it loudly, but also when we hear it whispered. This oppression and hate speech is intertwined in the systems of groups that we are a part of. See, this is the most valuable support and opportunity that a community offers, and we must seize it with conviction and cannot forget that all of this is just as real here as it is in the world outside of Swarthmore. Now, there are plans in place to change the way this institution addresses these issues and facilitates conversation around diversity. But as a member of the student body, here's what I want to see happen. I want to see you step up and talk about these issues on your own time. I want you to step up and ask someone to stop doing something that may be discriminatory or hateful. I want you to not be afraid to intervene when friends, professors, classmates, or someone you may not have ever spoken to in your entire life says things that are hurtful in their words or does things that are hurtful in their actions. But with that said, at the same time, I want you to be open, accepting, and understanding when someone asks you to stop saying something that is hurtful. We're all part of this community. I don't want anyone to be scared to walk around campus. I don't want to be scared to walk around campus. And I don't want any of you to be scared to step up and ask someone to stop. So please, take time today to reflect on the thoughts that have been shared. And please think about how you, and not the person next to you, can make a positive change here at Swarthmore. Don't wait for that next person to do it. And please, just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Hatred, ignorance, prejudice, phobia. There are no more destructive ideas to the nature of an educational community, and at the same time, no greater justification for the ideals of education that we all hold dear. At its core, the mission of this community is to push back the frontiers of ignorance. And that occurs in our classrooms, our laboratories, our residence halls, and in those random encounters that make this place special. But we need to face the reality that the struggle is not always successful. We have seen too many examples of that in recent months, including last week. When we cannot push back, then we must shine a light on those dark places where ignorance and intolerance live. That's what this event is all about, showing that we can band together to cast that light. Those of us fortunate enough to be faculty have devoted our careers to the ideal that we should combat ignorance wherever we find it. We stand ready to join and support this great work. I want to say a few words about redemption, a powerful and underappreciated force in our world. I believe in the power of education, of dialogue, of discussion, of simple, forthright exposure to redeem the haters, the ignorant. We can turn the prejudgers into acceptors, the phobics into those who welcome. But how do we encourage redemption among those who would strike at the heart of what this institution seeks to achieve. The first step is what we're doing today, calling out those who are in need of change, those who fail to accept the simple truth that our differences are a source of great strength. Where some see a stranger, we should see a contributor with unique gifts and perspectives. Where some see an unfamiliar lifestyle, we should see values worthy of celebration. Where some see difference, we should see strength in the opportunity to broaden perspectives, to cast off our preconceived notions. Let's be clear about one thing. We cannot achieve redemption by asking the victims to solve the problems of those who would victimize them. We do so by standing together and declaring, with our solidarity and shared strength, that our community stands against ignorance and hatred. We are ready to work with anyone who is prepared to renounce intolerance and begin the conversation. Thanks to the determination of students, faculty, and staff, that hard work has begun. Let's continue with honesty and passion. Thank you.
Inmates at Orleans Parish Prison raped an incarcerated transgender woman at knife point in New Orleans, Louisiana. A nightclub bouncer and an unidentified man held down Timothy Reyes, who identifies as gay, and then proceeded to punch him and call him anti-gay slurs in West Hollywood, California. 3 unnamed people called the gay man, 31, and his cousin Aaron Woodland faggies, and then shot the gay man at the IHOP restaurant in the Columbia Heights neighborhood of Washington, D.C. 2 unnamed young men attacked and knocked a transgender woman unconscious in Washington, D.C. A group of men yelled anti-gay slurs, attacked, and dragged a gay man, 29, along the street in Washington, D.C. The survivor required surgery to repair a broken jaw as a result of the blows to his head and face. 5 men exited a car, approached 2 gay black men, 20 and 27, called them fags and sissies, and beat them unconscious with baseball bats in Dallas, Texas. Paul Anthony Martinson, 39, and an unnamed man approached a gay couple holding hands and called them anti-gay slurs, which resulted in a physical fight between the men and the couple in Portland, Oregon. Javier Menendez Cuesto Daniel, 36, discovered close friend Rosita, a transgender woman, dead with multiple stab wounds in her apartment in Miami, Florida. Jeffrey Lee, 23, and 2 unnamed young men attacked Tim Miller and his partner David as they were taking a walk in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana. 4 men yelled anti-gay slurs and repeatedly punched Michael Buston and his friend, who both identify as gay, in the face in Oxford, Ohio. These incidents are just some of those gathered by the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs this past March. Louisiana, California, Washington, D.C., Texas, Oregon, Florida, Ohio, Swarthmore. This is our national context. The connection between anti-gay slurs and violence is clear. I also want us to consider how such homophobic hate slurs and other hate speech are themselves experienced as acts of violence. Faggot, queer, dyke, bitch, freak, die. I worry about the escalation of homophobic incidents on this campus. I worry that the most recent demonstration includes a death threat. I worry about what this indicates about the safety, both physical and emotional, of LGBTQ and other students on this campus. And yeah, I worry about what this means for how safe I feel walking with my partner and my 6-year-old child on this campus. I am, of course, convinced that hate speech against one group left unnoticed or undernoticed invites hate speech against other groups. Although today we stand here to recognize such hate directed at the queer community, I also recognize the ongoing hatred perpetrated against students of color and other targeted communities. I worry that we are still struggling with how best to confront such hate, that we haven't done enough or acted swiftly enough and courageously enough to make it clear that this type of action will not be tolerated. I say this not only because I've heard students level these complaints at the community and administration, but also because these incidents are still occurring. What are we failing to communicate about the severity of such actions that allows them to continue? Why and in what ways are we failing to respond in such a way that would stop such incidents of violence? How can we stand united to stamp out hate speech and hate acts of all kinds on this campus? The website Not in Our Town documents and shares the experiences of everyday people developing extraordinary ways to oppose bigotry of all kinds. It showcases 3 guiding principles when confronting hate. The first principle is that hate speech, graffiti, vandalism, flyers, we could add chalking, should not be ignored or dismissed, no matter from where it comes. In other words, take these things seriously as indicators of a climate that needs to be changed. Act quickly. The second principle is that targeted communities of hate groups are going to be watching very closely to see how the rest of the community responds. If people are saying it's not a big deal, don't pay attention, that's exactly what they want. The message to those who are being targeted is your safety is unimportant. If, on the other hand, people say what happens to the smallest minority happens to us all, and we will not stand by and permit that to continue, the whole community is strengthened and relationships are built up. The third principle is to focus the energy of the community not so much on the perpetrators, but rather on their targets and find significant ways to publicly stand with them. So I want to suggest some ways that we can publicly stand together and show support. Put up signs, this is a homophobia, transphobia-free space, or this is a no-hate space. Wear buttons or patches or ribbons that show your support. Post things on Facebook against homophobia and hate. Work together to have trainings in anti-homophobia and anti-transphobia workshops on campus and in the surrounding communities. Explore the interconnections of racism, misogyny, and homophobia in these sections. Consider designing and wearing something at commencement that will show your support. Allies, we need you. Don't let such actions rest only on the shoulders of LGBTQ students. Remember to stand together with other groups targeted, because a threat to one, as you've heard, is a threat to all. In closing, I want to suggest an updated version of a campus program called Same-Sex Hand-Holding Day, which was created as a means for everyone on a college campus, queer and straight, to visibly express solidarity with the LGBTQ community. As we leave today, I encourage people to hold hands with someone that would presumably make the perpetrators of the hate speech we have recently seen uncomfortable, but more importantly, that would make the intended targets of such hate speech feel safe and demonstrate that we are not alone. We can talk about staging kiss-ins later. Thank you for your time.
So today, we come to this place to live, learn, work, and share ourselves in this community. We bring various attributes which make up a beautifully woven tapestry, making our community vibrant. We have committed members of staff and faculty who have dedicated their careers and their lives to this community and have made this place such a special place that new people like me want to be a part of it. We attract the most brilliant minds and hearts to come to this place, built on a foundation of doing good. And then life happens. Our community is shaken by acts of hate, which in turn perpetuates outrage and anger. But we must remember who we are. We are a community of a peaceful people, built on a foundation of doing good by one another. We are not immune to the difficult circumstances that brought us here today. But as a community, we come together peacefully to demonstrate that we are, in fact, united. We come together to share our pain, our outrage, and our disappointment at those who threaten members of our community, but we do so respectfully. This is a community call to action, to speak out, to speak up. We will not let any negative circumstance dishearten us or take away the joy of our conscious integrity. We will not allow circumstances to divide us. We will not allow ignorance and intolerance to disrupt our community, the place we come to live, learn, work, and share of ourselves. As we come together peaceably and respectfully, we support one another. We take a stand because we are several members of one community. We stand together in good times, and we stand together in tough times. It's through our collective efforts that we will find the strength and courage to persevere and to make a difference. Thank you.
As we conclude today's gathering, I want to begin by thanking several people who made this event possible today. First, our speakers, also the facility staff, public safety, and to all the students who helped us in planning today's event. As we continue to move forward in unity, I want to close with another quote from Bell Hooks about the importance of cultivating a community based on trust. And I quote, "Creating trust usually means finding out what it is we have in common, as well as what separates us and makes us different. Lots of people fear encountering difference because they think that honestly naming it will lead to conflict. The truth is our denial of the reality of difference has created ongoing conflict for everyone. We become more sane as we face reality and drop sentimental notions like we are all just human, just the same, and learn both to engage our differences, celebrating them when we can, and also rigorously confronting tensions as they arise. And it will always be vital, necessary, for us to know that we are all more than our differences. That it is not just what we organically share that can connect us, but what we come to have in common, because we have done the work of creating community, the unity within diversity that requires solidarity within a structure of values, beliefs, yearnings that are always beyond the body, yearnings that have to do with the universal spirit." End quote. I want to urge all of us to strive to overcome our fears and hesitations and to seek our unity within diversity. This will involve risks, but with those risks will come great rewards. The rewards of a community that is authentic and inclusive. This is my hope for Swarthmore. This is my hope for all of us. I look forward to working with all of you towards these goals, and very soon I will be able to announce to you the membership of our Diversity and Inclusion Implementation Committee. This committee will be tasked with creating a specific list of goals and initiatives based on what we have heard during strategic planning and over the course of the last year at events such as our Diversity Symposium. This will include recommendations for a structure for accountability that will help us move forward in a positive direction and keep us moving forward. We will focus on areas such as recruitment and retention initiatives, assessment, and community engagement, in particular looking to support sustained and ongoing ways for all students, faculty, and staff to engage in connecting across lines of difference and cultivating an understanding of social justice issues. As President Chopp indicated, the work of seeking justice and fighting oppression has been a part of Swarthmore's history from its founding. But we must continually rededicate ourselves to these efforts. That is what we have done, and that is what we will do. I want to invite you to share with me, the President and other members of the administration, your ideas and recommendations. We will now end with a moment of silence, and as is our tradition, this silence will be broken with the shaking of hands. Once President Chopp initiates the shaking of hands, We hope that each of you will turn and shake hands with your neighbors, and perhaps, as Professor Kessler suggested, you might shake that hand and keep right on holding it as you leave the beach today. Again, I just want to thank you so much to everyone for being here today. Thank you.